Having some Hustle Juice, New England Coffee Roasters Nantucket Blend, I believe, is what I'm drinking this morning. I've been hovering back and forth between that and Pete's Medium Roast. Welcome to another Shamanic Coffee Hour on my channel. I know by looking at you know, watching the traffic statistics, I don't know what they call it, analytics, that most people tune in, the peak is at about 7 minutes in. So it takes 7 minutes for all these channels to come around and looks like yeah, so we're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, um and Twitch, I guess. I don't I doesn't look like I'm on Twitter this morning. Don't know why, but hey, whatever. We're gonna go with the flow. Today I'm going to talk about being a person of presence. What that means, how we can do that, why we would want to do that. Good morning. Good morning to you. I'm gonna pop comments in like this. Good morning, Caitlin. I'm assuming that's let me know if I'm mispronouncing your name. I don't like to mispronounce people's names, but um good morning to you. So I'm gonna pop comments in. I did have an overlay before where chat was coming up, and then last time I did this, somebody came in and started posting some hateful stuff. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, um I like that new format for comments. Yeah. Yeah, that's the way I'm gonna do it, I think, just because I don't want to become a channel for hatred for sure. That's oh good. I'm glad I said your name right. I don't want to become a channel for hatred for I that is the opposite of what I'm about. And this person had some kind of misunderstanding about what I was saying, I guess, and thought I was saying something hateful about something else. And I apologize if anybody takes it that way. I don't hate. um, I absolutely don't. I'm don't think I'm capable of that at this point in my spiritual path. And that's not spiritual bypassing to say that one is incapable of hate. Yeah, yeah, only love and cows. I love cows. I live near a farm, and uh, they have a bunch of calves right now. They have these cows, and I don't know the different breeds of cows. I know they're Jersey cows and Scottish Highland cattle and all this stuff, but they have these cows that have a beautiful rust color, and they are they just had some calves, and I want to climb the fence and go hang out with the baby cows. But they do have no trespassing signs up on the farm, so I'm not going to do that. But you know, I need to meet my neighbors. I live out in the middle of nowhere, so when I say neighbors, I'm talking like 3 miles away. That's next door. So good morning, happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for joining me again. Um, Look, I'm gonna pop that coming up. No hate, only love and cows. Exactly. Exactly. So I want to be and actually there's a really good things happen I synchronistically for me all the time. Um I think it's because I'm paying attention to synchronicity. But what I was sort of talking about, uh being incapable of hatred, you get to a point, and that's not spiritual bypassing. That doesn't mean like, oh, I secretly hate these people, but I'm gonna, pretend like I don't. Um, you get to a point in spiritual development where you realize that these people are aspects of you. You're all aspects of the same consciousness, the same underlying awareness. And so hatred for another person is hatred of yourself. And so don't do that. Like, it doesn't make sense. Um and so it gets to the point where you see hate as just like the silliest thing. Yeah, hatred is serious. It is serious, but it's a silly position to take. Hating anyone is a silly position to take. That's very different than, somebody is doing me harm and I need to stop the harm that's happening, or I need to exclude this person from my life because they keep causing me harm. I can do that without hatred, right? And that's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is I'm letting go of the emotional charge I have with this person. That doesn't mean I'm going to do something stupid and let them back in my life if they're causing me harm. So love and cows this morning. For some reason, this is not streaming to, I think it's not streaming to Facebook, but um, which is unfortunate. I don't know why that is, but hey, whatever, if you're with me. So talking about synchronicity, and how things come up. So right before this, I was getting set up to do this, and trying to be calm and trying to be present, but at the same time I'm hurriedly getting things ready to. I don't do a whole lot of, in case you couldn't tell, I don't do a whole lot of prep for these, but I do. I have to set things up a little bit, set up the space, and get into the right place. And it's early in the morning here, and my kids just left for school, and so I was hustling around and not being particularly present, not being mindful, not being in the moment. And what happened? And I knocked a candle in a glass container over and just smashed it into a zillion pieces all over the floor. And I'm not saying I'm not saying spirit did that. Of course, spirit did that. Spirit does everything. I'm not saying this was like the hand of God coming down and saying, you know, that, but it was, for me, a synchronicity that, oh, it's time to pay attention. Like, I've got to be present. I've got to bring my mind into the present moment. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't being a person of presence. And that's what this episode's about. So get my mind into it. Um, oh, there you go. There you go. So synchronicity there as well. Um, yeah. And if I can give any piece of advice to begin with this morning, I would say pay attention to synchronicities. Um, it even pays to write them down sometimes when they come up in your life. Keep a journal of synchronicities. There are two things I think, or we'll say three things I think people should journal. Um, I'm not a great journaler. I'm not, I know some people journal everything all the time, and it is fantastic. It's a fantastic way to process information. Even if you never read your journal, writing things out helps you process. So, three things I recommend people journal. Um, One, synchronicities. So write them down. Something happens in the same way, in the same place. Could it be an omen? Could it be, um, things that happen that are really, really appropriate to the moment, or things coming up in a pattern, or that sort of thing. The only way to sort of start paying attention to that is, one of the things that happens when you write things down is you tell your brain, this is important and I want to start to pay attention to that. Which brings me to the second thing that people should journal, and that's their dreams. Keep a notebook and a pen by your bed. I don't have it with me, but I have a pen with a light on it. So I can open up a notebook or journal and flick the light on my pen and write, jot down some notes. So if I wake up remembering a dream, I'll jot it down. And doing that alone will help you remember your dreams, because you're teaching your brain that this is important. I need to pay attention to this. And so, what is it? Synchronicities, dreams, and the third thing, and this I'll do a whole episode about this. I'll do a whole podcast about this. Is write down triggers. Anytime you feel triggered, I realize, the term being triggered is used like jokingly and insultingly in all kinds of different ways. But what I mean by triggered means anytime you have an emotional reaction, and particularly an emotional reaction that is surprising or seems to come out of nowhere or seems to be out of proportion to what has happened. So somebody says a word to you and you fly into a rage, or somebody cuts you off in traffic and you get the road rage thing going on, or you see something on TV and it brings up some powerful emotions for you that come, like, where did that come from? Write it down, write down the date, write down what happened and what your reaction was. If you do that for a month, even, I say do that for the rest of your life, but if you even just did that for a month, you will gain such insight into what's in your shadow. Triggers come out of the shadow, uh, and this episode's not about the shadow. I've done other episodes about the shadow. I will do more about the shadow. It's such an important topic. But triggers, being triggered, and I stole this phrase from a another teacher's student who, like, said something so powerful. I was on a call with them and said something so powerful. I was like, "Oh," and I told him, I said, "I'm going to steal that phrase from you." Triggers are, he called it, breadcrumbs from the teacher. Powerful if you think about it. The breadcrumbs that lead you back to your teacher. Who's your teacher? Not me. I present myself as a teacher, but really I'm just a guide. I'm just here to lead people to experiences. You're your own teacher. You are your own guru. I don't do that for you. I don't have I don't have the time, the energy, or the attention span to be anybody's guru. But what I do love to do is anything that empowers people to be their own teacher, to take their, take their own, claim their own spiritual power, their own sovereignty, all of those things. So, triggers, write those down. Let's talk about being a person of presence. And I'm going to go into a little, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. I always sort of eh, feel a little weird about that. And the reason for that is that I'm trying to be non-egoic, and I'm not trying to present myself as anything special other than I'm a person. I have a unique set of experiences, but so do every single person, everyone on this planet has a unique set of experiences. We can learn from everyone. So hopefully when I talk about some parts of my story a little bit, that something resonates with people and that there's something to be learned from there. Um, I only talk about my story not so that I can talk about myself, but because I'm familiar with my story. I've lived it, and that's the story I have. And hopefully people can take something from that. But I'll tell you that I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 50. 50. Half a century I lived with ADHD without any sort of diagnosis. Um, and presence is extremely challenging for me. And I'll give you an example of that. And this has happened, I'll give you one example, but this has happened many, many times in my life. Um, I'm uh, I'm at a place where I'm doing some training. I'm doing martial arts training. I was teaching a martial arts class, and I'm talking to another teacher, having a conversation, and somebody walks in the room, and I'm in the mid sentence with this person, and instantly I lock onto that other person. I go, "Oh, so and so's here, blah blah blah," and I leave. And my friend who I'm talking to got offended by that, got upset, and came over and goes, "Hey, that was not cool." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, that really wasn't cool." So, attentionally, that has been a challenge for me my entire life for, for many, many years. But I understand that. Like, I understand that's a challenge for me, and I work on that. Right. So, being a person of presence is about attention. It is about where I'm placing my attention. And presence as a spiritual principle is about, we're going to, sort of use the term to define the term, about being in the present moment, this moment, and understanding that this moment is the only moment that's actually real. Because if I'm thinking about the future, that's fantasy. If I'm thinking about the past, that's memory. Okay? I might be imagining something about the present moment. What are my kids doing right now? They're in biology class? Are they dissecting something? Or are they looking through a microscope? That's imagination. There's nothing wrong with imagination, but it takes me out of being in presence. So presence is about being here and now. So another term for that, another term for being present, is being mindful. And there is so much research on mindfulness, um, because, and I love this. I love this. I love that they're doing research on mindfulness as, from a medical, psychological perspective, because mindfulness is free. It's absolutely free. You don't have to manufacture a drug. You don't have to, you don't have to, you can test, you can do these tests where you teach people mindfulness and monitor them, and it's very, very inexpensive to run these tests, right? And so there's lots of research about mindfulness and meditation in general, but mindfulness specifically. And there is, mindfulness, I forget the exact term for it, MB something something, mindfulness based something therapy. What they found, these are just a few of the things that they have found about mindfulness. And I will talk about what mindfulness is, and, give a little bit of, a little bit of instruction about if you want to practice mindfulness, because it does take practice. For me, it takes, I've got ADHD, it takes a lot of practice. It's sometimes it takes a great deal of effort, but it is so worth it. And what they found, that, people who are doing this mindfulness-based meditation or mindfulness-based practice in conjunction with, medical issues or psychological issues, is that they are getting better, is that pain, like the perception of pain, is reduced, the depression is reduced. It's really, really, really good for you. Biological markers change. The mind and the body can't be separated. The mind, the body, the spirit, the soul, these things can't really be separated until you die. Until the body mind dies. You don't die. The body mind dies someday. This body mind will be dead someday. And but until then, I can't separate this out too much. With the exception of shamanic work, in which, we purposefully separate consciousness from the body. But even then, there's still a link. What I do in shamanic journey affects this body. What I do in meditation affects this body. What I do with this body affects my spirit as well. There is, the shamanic ceremony or practice to help with trauma is called soul retrieval. And there's such a thing as body part soul retrieval. So if somebody loses part of their body, there's an, amputation of some sort, an accident or medical thing. um there is a ceremony to restore the emotional connection to that part, or to heal the emotional linkage there. Mind, body, spirit is just a continuum. They all exist on the same, you know on different planes, but the same continuum. It's sort of like light. It's sort of like saying you have light and you have red light. It's light. It's electromagnetic radiation. It happens to be at a different frequency. And when the sun shines and you hold a prism up to it and you split the sunlight into, which is, um, I paint, and we use the color wheel to tell, complementary colors, and all the different color schemes. And Isaac Newton actually invented the color wheel. He, was splitting light with a prism, but it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of the same light. We just look at it in a way and it appears to differentiate. And we're the same way. We're all part of the same source, but we appear to differentiate. Which is cool. It's fun to inhabit this body for a while and motor around and break candles and stuff, break stuff, fix stuff, clean stuff up. Um, it's fun to do that. And I don't mean to make light of existence. For some people it's very dark and heavy and all of these things. Um, Even that, I mean fun in the very real way that, we are experiencing things, everything from grief, the whole spectrum of human experience happens while we inhabit this body and mind for this period of time, right? Everything from grief to great joy and everything in between. And so we have to temporarily inhabit a body mind to sort of experience that a little bit. So it's very cool. So being a person of presence is about mindfulness. It's about being able to bring our attention to the present moment and the present location, and what is the condition that's going on. And so I talked a little bit about some of the health benefits of mindfulness, and that really is about becoming present, about being here now. you know, if you've talked to me or other people with attention differences, the term is neurodivergent, but I like the term neurospicy. I don't know. Somebody gave that to me. I'm neurospicy. I like that. I process information differently than, most people, not everybody, but most people. I process information differently. And attention is a challenge for me, but it's important that I work on that. Um, One of the reasons it's important I work on that for myself, yes, but also I see clients. I see clients from all over the world. And one of the greatest gifts, one of the greatest healing techniques, I guess, um, one of the greatest things I can do to heal people is that I can be completely present for my clients. I can sit across from them non-judgmentally and hold space for them to tell me their story, tell me what's going on with their life, talk about the intimate details of their life. People talk to me about everything from, drug use to, sexuality things to grief to, history of trauma and abuse and all of these things. And for me to be able to sit with them non-judgmentally, that is so healing. When people have done that for me, I could not be more grateful for that. One of the greatest things you can do is to sit with somebody if somebody is hurting or in grief or whatever, and just sit, just be with them, be present for them, hold them. Not Now, here's the rub, right? Here's the challenge, here's the difficulty. So not only do I have ADHD, but I also am somebody who wants to help, desperately wants to help people. It's why I do what I do, right? I desperately want to help people. I desperately want to, if somebody tells me, oh, this is, I'm suffering for this, and I want to, like, oh, let me give you some advice. Let me take you out of that problem. And often that's a mistake. Most of the time, that's a mistake. Giving advice prematurely. Um, One of the things I learned in shamanic training, so I trained in, my initial training was in an apprenticeship in which I sat in circle with, I don't know, I think it was 16 or 17 other people and a teacher and assistants. And um, one of the very first rules of sitting in circle is we don't rescue people. We don't rescue people. If somebody over there is melting down, crying, whatever, and it happens pretty frequently because you're pulling up some deep stuff and confronting it and, processing it, we don't go over and put our arm around, oh, are you okay? What can I do for you? We yeah, I'm gonna show that. Yeah, yeah. So, that's really common because you're a good person and you want to help people, right? It's instinctual for us. Oh my gosh, you're hurting. Let me help you. Let me take that pain away. Let me do this. So in circle, um, my teacher would she what we call kept a tight circle, which means you didn't act out, you didn't step outside of the boundaries. There aren't a lot of rules in shamanism, but there are rules for behavior in a circle so that everybody has the experience they're supposed to have. And one of the most important rules is not to rescue. And when I've taught classes, that's part of now what I pass on as well. And because the instinct is, "Oh, this person's crying, let me go comfort them, let me help them." Um, no, we're going to sit as silent witness for them, and, they'll know that I'm there for them. I might hand them a box of tissues, that's the extent of it. Um, but I don't go rescue. And why? Because am I'm holding space for them to process that emotion. When we step in prematurely, we short circuit the process that the person is going through. When we don't step in, when we stay present for that person, when we hold space for a person to process that challenging time, they will go through it and they will heal. They'll heal faster because of that. Um, you can take that, what we call take that for checking. You don't have to believe a single thing I say. This is only my perspective. You can take that and test it out for yourself. um, but I have not experienced an exception to that. Personally, I've not experienced, and I have, lots of clients all over the world, different cultures, different languages. Not that I speak different languages, they come, I apologize, but people generally have to speak English when they work with me, but they, not native languages. So all of these differences, but this is the same for everyone in my experience so far, 100% of the time. Um, one lesson that I have learned is, and somebody, I don't remember who taught this to me, and I apologize for that, but maybe not that important where this comes from. But somebody's having a hard time and they come to you and they're, oh my gosh, I just lost my job and my boyfriend broke up with me and yada yada yada. Um, you can actually ask people, oh, are you looking for advice right now? Or would you just like me to sit here and listen to you? I'm happy to do either. I'm happy to talk to you about either. And a lot of times people just want to what we call vent, right? They just want to emote. They just want that emotion to come up and out. Giving advice when somebody is having an emotional moment is oftentimes counterproductive. Why? Because I'm not ready to hear advice yet. I'm not in an emotional state to learn yet. I'm going through something very challenging, right? I'm having a meltdown because I lost my job and my dog ran away and my boyfriend left and my car broke down and all of these things in my life have happened and I'm feeling all of this stuff. Well, you know, and a lot of times the advice we give people is inappropriate anyway. Like we give people platitudes or we give people advice that's appropriate for our own lives or whatever, and unless you actually know how to solve somebody's problem, and frequently what happens if I feel like I'm getting into an advice mode, I will say to somebody, I have some ideas about that, are you open to hearing them, or whatever. And I always present it. I don't really love the word should, right? So when we start telling people you should do this, you should do that, like that gets my hackles up a little bit, right? Um because what we're doing is we're presenting ourselves as an expert in the other person's life. That's not that's not the case. You are not an expert in anybody else's life. Sometimes I have some expertise that can be helpful, right? My daughter, one of my daughters complaining about her boyfriend, right? I'm not going to use the word should with her. Oh, you should break up with him, or you should say this, or you should say that. So if she's looking for advice, you know, oh, oftentimes they're not. Teenagers are almost never looking for advice unless they directly ask you for it. And they're going to reject it out of hand a lot of times, at least, at least in my experience. I raised, fortunately, a couple of very independent, very intelligent teenagers, and most of the time they don't need my advice. They frequently need information from me because they haven't gotten to the point where they know, everything about everything. But and I don't know everything about everything, but I've had some, I've had more life experiences. I can tell them, oh, this is going on with your car. Maybe try this, or but so they're having problems with the boyfriend. Oh, then, that's really hard. What do you think you're going to do about that? Oh, I don't know. And I can talk to them about their solutions. I can be solution oriented, but talk about them. And most of the time, if I help them think about it, they will come up with their own thing. But I'm not an expert in being a teenage girl in the year 2023. And they have, the relationships they have are very different than the relationships I had when I was a teenager. Yes, there's some things in common. Yes, we're dealing with teenage hormones and teenage drama and all of that stuff, but it is not exactly the same. For one thing, we didn't have cell phones when I was a teenager. I don't, I I had a phone in my room, but we had one phone line into the house. Like, so it wasn't like wasn't texting my significant others all the time and like, oh, there's, um, you know, I can't imagine what life would have been like if I had had a cell phone and could text and stuff as a teenager. Um, I probably never got off that thing. As it was, I probably called my girlfriend as much as possible when I wasn't actually with her. Rotary phones, yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, it's very funny presenting like old technology to my kids. I'm like, when I was growing up, we had this phone and you had this dial and you had to like dial it and the phone weighed about, 30 pounds. It was it was metal and it had actual bells inside of it. And when it rang, that's why we say your phone rings. because it had actual bells in it. And um, if somebody tried to call you and you weren't there, there was no voicemail. I didn't have an answering machine probably till I was 13 or 14. We didn't have an answering machine. You just tried again. And if you tried to call somebody and they were on the phone with somebody else, you got what's called a busy signal. So it's very it's very interesting. I feel like my grandparents now, and I'm like, when I was a kid, and my grandmother passed away in February. Actually, she was 106. So when she talked about what life was like when she was a kid, it was very different. Very few people owned car where she lived, and the way she grew up. Very few people owned cars. I mean, she was born in 1916. Very few people owned cars. Very few people owned horses. So most everybody walked everywhere, and there were no stores where she lived. So everybody bought everything off the back of a wagon. That included meat, vegetables, sewing supplies, furniture. Everything they bought came off the back of a wagon. There was no going to the market for them. Where they lived, where they happened to live, and in the time when she was a child. I can't imagine, I see stuff change significantly in my lifetime. In her lifetime, she went from nobody owning a car to space travel, right? And lasers. And, um, I can't, if I were to live another 50 years, I can't imagine what, technological changes are coming down the pike. So anyway, back to being a person of presence. So it's important for you, and it's also important for the people that you deal with, the people that you encounter, the people that are in your life, to be a person of presence. Um, and I'll teach you a secret, and I'm going to give you I'll give you a story from my life as well. So back in college, a mazillion years ago, when I was an undergrad, I was studying television and film, and I was going to be a big filmmaker and TV guy and whatever. It didn't really happen, but whatever. Here we are. So I was doing a class on making documentaries, and we were shooting documentaries, and I was working with a partner, a young woman who was a grad student at the time, and we're working on a documentary together, and phones come into play here. Uh, so we were supposed to meet up to go do a shoot, to go somewhere to shoot some footage, and um, I was waiting for her to call, and she hadn't called me, and I went. So I'm like, I got to get some dinner. I haven't eaten all day, and I went and got some dinner, and I came back, and I had missed her call, and then I called her back and missed her, and we played phone tag, and I missed the shoot. And I went into class the next day, and she came up to me just PO'd, just ticked off, right? Just pissed. And she's like, I am very angry with you. I said, okay, tell me about that. And I sat down and I sat across from her. And now I should say at the time, I'd been practicing Tantric Buddhism for a couple of years and had some presence of mind and had the ability at that point in time, which has served me very well over the years, to not allow this person's anger to fall on me or to reflect it back at them. So this is, one of the first major experiences I had with holding space for somebody. And I just sat and I looked at her with the kindest eyes I could muster. I don't know what was in me that told me to do that, but I'm like, I'm just going to be, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to let her be angry, and I'm not going to argue with her, and I'm not going to be judgmental, and, I'm going to just sit and be present. And she is, blah, blah, blah. And we have this work to do. And she's, and a lot of her anger actually, and I find this is true for quite a lot of people for quite a lot of times. A lot of her anger was anxiety about not being able to complete the course correctly and getting the documentary done and whatever, and that my not being around when she called and missing her and that sort of thing um became the catalyst, became the thing that she latched her anger onto. So um was really fascinating for me. So I just sat with her and I looked at her with kind eyes. I might have even been smiling, I'm not sure, and just listened. And what happened was the emotion started to wind down, right? It started to wind itself out. And she started getting quieter and talking slower and being more calm. And within about 5 minutes, she just looked at me and said, "I'm really sorry. Are you, do you hate me? Are you angry with me?" I looked at her and I said, "I'm not angry with you." I said, "And I absolutely don't hate you. And I'm really sorry that that experience was, that made you so upset." And that was it. And that was the end of it. Now imagine the difference if I had come in and she said, "I'm really angry at you." And I'm like, "Well, I waited around for you to call and you didn't call me and I hadn't eaten all day and I went to dinner and I missed your call and then I called you back and weren't around for my call." Imagine if we had just gone back and forth like that. One of a few things would have happened. Um, First and most likely is the anger would have escalated. Um, I have a long history in the martial arts and teaching self-defense classes, for about 20 years. And I always teach de-escalation techniques. Most people think of self-defense as physical techniques to fight another human being. But that's last resort. Like I want people to avoid fighting with other people. Like that's a no-win situation. If you have to fight somebody, chances are, both of you are going to get hurt. What if nobody got hurt? And so there are situations in which physical self-defense is unavoidable, but those are few and far between. And what happens a lot of time is people are unable to diffuse anger, diffuse situations by being present. So in teaching martial arts and teaching self-defense, I always teach de-escalation. I always teach, using verbal skills, using nonviolent body language, being present in the moment. There's nothing like being present in the moment. I remember, and I'll talk about a martial arts class. I had a teacher, my main martial arts teacher coming up, I studied with for 10, 12 years, something like that. Uh, you know, Amazing teacher, a little kooky, amazing teacher. Um, really broke things down into a science and really made you think about things in a very logical way. And uh, we were doing training with bayonets, actually, like old vintage bayonets, and they had sheaths on them, right? And we were, attacking each other with sheathed bayonets. And it sounds really weird, but and it was, but and he did not feel like we were paying adequate enough attention. Now, you would never do this today, and if you did, you would lose. Somebody would sue you. You would lose any insurance you had. You'd probably lose your home. Um, he didn't feel like we were paying enough attention, so he said, "All right, everybody, stop, back up." Backed up, and he walked through, and he took all the sheaths off the bayonets. So now I'm looking at a sharp but rusty bayonet coming at my direction. And there's nothing, you know, all of a sudden attention comes in like this and becomes locked in, becomes very narrow. So one of the things that I use in describing attention is this sort of matrix. If you can imagine four boxes, right? And across, the two columns, so you've got two columns and two rows. And so there's essentially four dimensions of attention in this model, which probably, you could probably divide attention up into a million ways. There's inward focused attention and outward focused attention, right? So pull the sheath off and you've got a blade coming at you, very outward focused attention. And then there's narrow attention and there's wide attention. So if I'm painting and I've got my painting in front of me and I'm working on, brush strokes and texture in this painting, I have a very external, very narrow focus. My attention is not internal, and it is also not very wide. Somebody could probably walk into the room and I might not notice them. That is one form of presence, being external, narrow focus. And that is something that works with, sometimes it works with another person when they're being very upset. They become the center of attention. And I will give you, hopefully, I'm going to, I just talked about not giving advice. This isn't necessarily advice. This is information. You can take it or leave it. I'll give you a technique to practice for doing that. And I learned this from a course, I think in a communication course, like a business communication course. So when you're talking with somebody, and you can do this when you're talking with anybody, um, one of the ways to get people to like you, to be in sync with you, is to make them feel important. And the way to make people feel important genuinely is not with, you know, flattery and fakeness and, oh, you're the best. And that's not it. You make people feel important. I just kicking things over today. You make people feel important with your attention, right? You're important enough for me to give you my undivided attention. So here's a technique, here's a hack, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, to do that. When you're talking with another person, imagine there's a spotlight on them. Imagine, they're giving a monologue and there's a spotlight on them, and will narrow your attention in on this person. That's what spotlights do. If you go to see a comedian or a play or whatever, something on stage, a spotlight is meant to direct your attention. It's the brightest, most focused light, in on stage. Of course, people have spotlights on their house now, for their driveway or whatever, because that's what you want to direct your attention to. But that's what spotlights are for. They're for directing attention. So imagine there's a spotlight on somebody, and it will help you draw your focus in to that person. That's one way of bringing importance and attention to that other person and being a person of presence. The other thing you need to do is, most of what you need to do is internal. That is an internal thing, actually. Imagining the spotlight. The other thing you need to do is, we very often listen to respond. When we're having a conversation with somebody, we're listening and we're thinking about what we're going to say next to them. And if you are doing that, if you're thinking about what you're going to say next to them, first of all, you're not really paying full attention to that person. And second of all, you're formulating a response before they've articulated everything they need to articulate. So your response is going to be a little bit premature. And then the other thing that happens is you wind up interrupting the other person a lot, because, oh, I got to get this thought out before I forget it. And being interrupted doesn't always feel really great. So be present, listen to understand. Pay attention to the tone of voice, the body language, listen to the other person to understand. When they pause or when they're looking for a response, it will be there. Or you can actually say to somebody, let me think about that for a moment. Or I'm trying to articulate the best possible response to that, or use your own words. People who people who know me know I would say something like, I'm trying to articulate the best response to that. Or I'm trying to think about my shamanic teacher was fantastic at this. And I think it was very conscious on her part. But somebody would, say we're sitting in circle and somebody journeyed. One of the things we don't do as a teacher is interpret our students' journeys. So if I journey and I see a rhinoceros, in my journey with a penguin on its back, um, and I'm just making up something, and I go, "Oh, I had this weird thing come up in my journey. What do you think that means?" And my teacher would actually lean back and stroke her chin and go, I need to think about that. That's a first for me." And then she might prompt you and say, "What do you think about that? What do you think that might mean?" And then somebody go, "Oh, well, it could mean this, could mean that." Hmm. Yeah. And she would kind of nod and pay attention. And she would never actually interpret anybody's journey, but this person would feel like they were getting what they needed from her, which they were getting what they needed from her. It was just her prompting them to do their own work. Shamanism, which is my personal path, is about direct revelation. It is about getting your own answers. Yes, I work with clients and I get answers for them because not very many of them are practicing shamans or shamanic practitioners. So it's my job to kind of get some answers for them. Um, but I also part of my practice is when I get information for them, I just deliver it and I try not to put too much interpretation on top of it. So if I journey for somebody and I see a turtle, say, I journeyed, I don't know what this means for you, but I see a turtle swimming around. Oh, my grandmother loved turtles and she passed away last year and she collected turtles and she had a pet turtle, and this is something that actually happened with a client, and it was really unusual, and this person was able to make all these connections to this information, this metaphoric or symbolic information that was coming up. It would have been a mistake for me to say, I see a turtle, that must mean you're armoring yourself against some assault that you are perceiving from out. I could have placed some sort of BS interpretation on top, but it would be crap. It would not be what this person needed to hear or interpret for themselves and make those connections. Okay. I don't make the connections for people. And that, you know, that is a challenge in being a practitioner. That's a challenge in having clients, but it's something that with experience you get better at. Stepping out of the way, becoming the hollow bone, as they say, right? The hollow bone, becoming a clear channel for spirit, where all I'm doing is communicating the information as I receive it and not placing a lot of interpretation on that. The again, there's a balance with that, with with client work, with students. Actually, there's a balance with that as well. And very often with my students, when I'm meeting with them in mentorship and one on one, again, it's the same sort of situation where most of the time, I'm giving them things to do. I'm leading them through practices, but then I sit back and I have the highest esteem, regard, and expectations for students. I don't think I am wiser than they are. I don't think I know more than they do. I have some experiences they have not had, and some training that allows me to guide them through the experiences that I have had previously. That's it. And I tell them I'm a guide, not a guru. Um, I'm really not here as an object of worship. I'm really not here to do your work for you. I'm really not here to, have you hand over your free will to me. I'm really not here to give you the answers that you have yourself. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through some experiences, give you some information, or point you in the direction of some information, and then let you be empowered. Let you empower yourself. I'm not empowering you. You're empowering yourself. I am guiding you to that experience of empowering yourself. That's one of the things I love about shamanism. And I've done the guru thing, and then not to take, like, if guru worship is your thing, again, no hatred on my part. I'm just saying personally, it's not my thing. I've done it. I worked with a teacher who was revered as an enlightened master and all of this stuff, and was this real sort of cult of personality. Um, and the way that people would like it, I was turned off by the way people would expect this guru to solve their all of their problems, rather than empowering them um to be self-sufficient, to be sovereign, to be powerful, to recognize their own enlightenment, to recognize that they are awake beings as enlightened as everyone else. It was, oh, how should I do this and what should I do about that? And um that's not my that's not how I want to live. And I don't know how you should live your life. I come on here and I talk about my experiences, but your experiences might be different. And one of the things about shamanism is we work with helping spirits, right? We work with power animals and other helping spirits, ancestral spirits. And I remember I have a student who, during a session, journeyed, and I was like, okay, I want you to try this, this, and this. And she's like, well, I tried that. And then this helping spirit said, no, don't do that. So what should I do? And I'm like, you know, always pay, always defer to your helping spirits. I don't know more than they do. And I don't know more than you do. I have a set of experiences in my mind that I'm trying to lead you through. But if they are telling you don't do it that way or don't do that at all for some reason, pay attention to that. Great morning to you as well. Thank you for joining in. Um, I am wrapping up shortly. I've been talking for about an hour, but I will. You can. This is available as a replay if you want to go back for any reason. Um, but as a teacher, being present for students is extremely, extremely important. I do remember. I remember having a therapist at one point in my life who I could tell she would zone out from time to time while I was talking. And I get it. Like, I could not be a therapist because I could not sit, knowing myself, knowing my attention issues. I could not sit there and be present for people all day long. I would have to have something to break that up. I suppose I could be a certain type of therapist, like an equine therapist or something along those lines, where I'm actively doing something, but that would be hard all day long. I do it with clients, but I'm also journeying for clients and doing and talking with them and asking questions and stuff. So I would notice when, this therapist would zone out a little bit, and then I would have something shocking to say to like snap her back in. uh, sometimes it was silly. Sometimes it was something to make her laugh. Like, I'm thinking of shaving my eyebrows off. What do you think? And I'd be like, what? I'm sorry. I'm like, oh, no, 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 never mind that. And then I would go back to what I was talking about. It was a funny, I don't know. I am weird, and that's okay. I embrace weird. But I just thought that was funny. But I get it. Like, I don't hold that against somebody. But being a person of presence is healing. You can heal someone, and this is important. You do not have to have a lick of training. You do not have to meditate, be a shamanic practitioner, be certified in Reiki, anything to heal somebody emotionally. What you can do is you can just sit with someone, hold space for them, do not judge them, do not jump in with advice. Oh, zoned out a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Yeah, it's very useful in relationships. Very useful in relationships, in my experience. Um, my my girlfriend my girlfriend refers to me as her walking Valium. I don't get my feathers ruffled very often. I don't, y- you know, I don't take a lot of things too seriously. I'm talking seriously, but I don't, it's not. People look at almost everything as the end of the world, and it's not. You know, um, Consciousness is infinite and immortal, and so yeah, someday this body and mind will die. I don't want it to die right now. I'm still using it, but I know it'll happen, and I might not expect it and whatever. But I also know that who I truly am and who you truly are never actually dies. And so, um, hard to take things that seriously when you know that deep, and everybody knows that deep inside them. But when you know that and that surfaces and that becomes the base level of your experience, hard to get ruffled by traffic or weather or the things that people politics. Politics is a clown show everywhere in the world. Yeah, it's serious. People do get hurt. They do take people's rights away. They do all kinds of stuff. But when you look at the theater of politics, it's comedic. It's why I always loved. I'm not a very political person, but I always loved political satire. Right, and it's important. Political satire is important, and it goes back to the court jesters, who were the only people who could criticize the king because they did it in a way that made people laugh. It was safe for whatever reason. Although I'm sure there were jesters who got probably got executed, for what they did. I don't know the full story there, but anyway, with that, I've been talking for a little over an hour. I'm going to leave you for today. Been talking a little bit about being a person of presence, and anybody can do this. This is, I have, I practice this. It's important to me. I have ADHD, and it is challenging, but it is so worthwhile. It will change your life. It'll change your relationships. It will heal other people. So, oh, you too. You too. Have a great Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. And if you're watching this not on a Friday, happy whatever day. And have a fantastic weekend. I will do at least one more of these next week, maybe a couple, and I will talk to you real soon.